Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopijana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Status Sismat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ISKCON's Foundracharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shishi Nitai Gora Hare Ki Shishi Gaur Nitai Ki Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Sankirtan Yagya Ki Gopuranandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So everyone, yes, for my part, I'm very, very happy to be here in this extension of ISKCON Newcastle, the Tirtha Prabhu's place, beautiful place, just suitable for devotees. And we, of course, the function today is, well, it's a combination of appreciation of Krishna Kripa Prabhu and Radha Kripa Mataji, and it's also dedicated to the deities. Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra Devi have moved here from Newcastle. Yes, they've moved here. Right. So we're going to focus on deity worship by householders, deity worship for families. And to do that, we're going to read a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. And we will read verse 22. It's really a classic verse, actually, in terms of this particular subject. So I'll read the verse, and the purport, or part of the purport at least, it's quite a big purport, and then I'll say a few words, and then I'll invite His Holiness Bhakti Nrsimha Maharaj to say a few words also. Is that okay? Yep. So, all right, so please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yes, so Srimad Bhagavatam 2:3-22. Barhayate te nayane naranam lingani vishnura nanarikshato ye padonrinam to druma janma bhajo shetrani nanu vrajato harir yo. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, His forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. Pretty strong verse. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Especially for the householder devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu. Forms like Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, or Sitaram especially, or any other form of the Lord, like Nrsimha, Varaha, Gornitai, Matsya, Kurma, Shalagram Shila, and many other forms of Vishnu, like Trivikram, Keshava, Achyuta, Vasudev, Narayan, and Damodar, as recommended in the Vaishnav Tantras or Puranas. And one's family should worship strictly according to the directions and regulations of Archana Vidhi. Any member of the family who is above 12 years of age should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. What's your age, Beta? You, yes. Okay, a few years to go. Right, should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and all the members of the household should be engaged in the daily service of the Lord, beginning from morning, 4 a.m., till night, 10 p.m., by offering Mangal Arati, Niranjana, Archana, Puja, Kirtan, Shringar, Boga Vaikali, Sandhya Arti, Pata, Boga at night, Shayan Arti, etc. Engagement in such worship of the deity under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master will gradually help the householders to purify their very existence and make rapid progress in spiritual knowledge. Simple theoretical book knowledge is not sufficient for a neophyte devotee. Book knowledge is theoretical, whereas the archana process is practical. Spiritual knowledge must be developed by a combination of theoretical and practical knowledge, and that is the guaranteed way for attainment of spiritual perfection. The training of devotional service for a neophyte devotee completely depends on the expert spiritual master who knows how to lead his disciple to make gradual progress towards the path back home, back to Godhead. One should not become a pseudo-spiritual master as a matter of business to meet one's family expenditures, but one must be an expert spiritual master to deliver the disciple from the clutches of impending death. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has defined the bona fide qualities of a spiritual master, and one of the verses in that description reads, Shri Vigrahara Dhanya Nityanana, Shringara Tan Mandira Marjanado, Yuktasya Bhaktams Chaniyunjatopi, Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. Shri Vigraha is the archa, or suitable, worshipable form of the Lord, and the disciple should be engaged in worshipping the deity regularly by shringar, by proper decoration and dressing, as also by mandira marjana, the matter of cleansing the temple. The spiritual master teaches the neophyte devotee all these kindly and personally to help him gradually in the realization of the transcendental name, quality, form, etc. of the Lord. Only attention engaged in the service of the Lord, especially in dressing and decorating the temple, accompanied by musical kirtan and spiritual instructions from scriptures, so only this can save the common man from the hellish cinema attractions and rubbish sex songs broadcast everywhere by radios. If one is unable to maintain a temple at home, he should go to another's temple where all the above performances are regularly executed. Okay, so let us say a few words about this. As I said, it's sort of the classic verse, or certainly one of, but maybe actually just the classic verse about deity worship at home, deity worship for householders. It's really important. So let's say a few words. First of all, some prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastucha Deshatarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikapatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, so it's really nice to see deities being nicely taken care of by a family. It's just wonderful. Deities should be adopted, you could say, accepted as family members. I mean, very special family members, but cared for like family members are, like little children. Of course, they're looked after, at least by any decent parents. They're looked after really nicely and trained and fed and dressed and facilitated in all respects, and particularly spiritual respects. So that's what Srila Prabhupada's talking about here, that the devotee families should have nice deities at home, and then they should look after them really nicely. Not like, I've done, when I used to travel around, I haven't been traveling for a few years now, but I used to travel around really a lot, and every few weeks or so we would do some sort of program of this sort somewhere in the world. And in some of the cases, the family, after we'd done the program for welcoming the deities, they'd ask, what is the minimum standard for looking after the deities? Not, I don't think I've ever been asked, what is the maximum standard? But I was asked on a number of occasions, what's the minimum standard? In other words, what's the least you can do so that the deities will not just walk out or do something like that, Oh. So yeah, there are minimum standards, but better if they're really looked after like real family members. Real family members don't eat once a week or have a bath once a week. That's, sort of, what would you say, in strict technical terms, those are part of the minimum standards, but it's nice to see deities being looked after really nicely. And when you look at such deities, you can see there's a certain type of, they exude a certain type of energy if they're looked after nicely. So, yes, the deity, the thing is that the deity is the Lord in person. The deity is not a representation or symbolic type of thing to remind you, just something as a reminder, oh yes, right, God, that's right. We have amongst just regular, ordinary people, they take photos of each other. They take, I think, millions and billions of photos of each other. But those photos, the person photographed is not present in the actual photograph. So if you speak to the photo of your friend or husband or wife or child or whoever, they're not going to hear you. Yes. But when you speak to the deity, actually when you just speak to, if you speak to a picture of the Lord, it's the same principle. He's present. He hears you. He sees you. And if he wants, he can reply. And sometimes he does. Not so often, unless you're a really special devotee. One time I was in Bhaktivedanta Manor, and Prabhupada was there, and he gave a class, and the deity of Krishna had a long wig, and I know they normally have shoulder length here, but this was down to the waist. It's really, for a male, it's just pretty extreme. So Prabhupada, at the beginning of the class, Srila Prabhupada, in front of everyone, raised the question, or just said that, isn't that wig, Krishna's hair, isn't it too long? And then he gave the class, and then at the end, Srila Prabhupada, as he's just stepping off the Vyasasan, Srila Prabhupada said, actually, you don't need to change the wig. Krishna likes his hair like that. This is Srila Prabhupada. It's not an ordinary person, not an ordinary devotee even. So the thing is, yes, that the transcendental persons, not just Krishna, but someone like Srila Prabhupada for that matter, they're present in their pictures. But the regular people are not. In those cases, it is just a representation, chemically produced or whatever they do. And just a reminder, it's not more than a reminder. So therefore, sometimes we, in a tongue-in-cheek way, although it's actually true, sometimes we say that in the morning when the husband goes to work, the wife may ask, what would you like for dinner, supper tonight? And he'll say something or other, maybe biryani, dal, and salad. Grated carrots. Yeah. So wife said, okay, fine. So husband goes to work, and at work, of course, being a good husband, on his desk he has a photo of his wife, of course. But during the day he gets an inspiration that, biryani and dal. No, not tonight. I want, what do I want? I want butter paneer with puri, yes, and deep-fried cauliflower sabji. So he speaks to the picture of his wife. This is my dear wife. Now, don't worry about the biryani and dal tonight. Make something a little special, butter paneer, cauliflower, deep-fried sabji, and puris. This is real paka prasad. So, okay. So then at the end of the day he goes home. Take a guess what he gets for supper. Biryani. And he says to his wife, but don't you remember I said to you, I want butter paneer, etc. And she said, no, you didn't telephone me, and that's what you told me in the morning, biryani, because she's not present in her picture. Even though she may be a very nice lady and very dedicated and so on, and maybe a devotee, and a very good devotee, but not on that level. But the deity of the Lord is on that level. And great devotees, like Srila Prabhupada, and so many great devotees in the histories, they would actually converse with the deities they were worshipping. Yes, there's so many examples of that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a number of accounts. Sakshi Gop, the deity of Sakshi Gopal, speaking to the one devotee, the deity of Gopal, who later went to Nathdwar in Rajasthan and is now known as Sri Nathji. He came in the dream of Madhavendra Puri that's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and spoke and said where he was. He was hidden because of the attacks of the invaders in India. So he was buried. And in the dream he told Madhavendra Puri where he had been buried and said, please gather the village people and come and uncover me and then put me in a temple and see that the worship is done properly. And they did. So there's all sorts of stories like that. I mean, not just stories, but real historical, authoritative historical accounts. There was one devotee, Gauridas Pandit, a close associate of Lord Chaitanya, and I mean, I could tell you a number of stories about him, but one I'll tell you is that Gauridas single-handedly, 7 days a week, he would cook a whole number of different preparations. Well, not just cook. First he'd go out and buy the ingredients, and then he would clean all the vegetables and cut them up and everything. And then he'd cook them, and then he'd offer them to they were the original Gaurnitai deities, life-size, in Ambika Kalna. And, that whole process would take till about 5 in the afternoon. And then, he'd be really fatigued, but he'd do this big offering with, I don't know, maybe 20 preparations or something like that. And he'd offer them to the deities, Gaurnitai. And one day, devotees, fasten your seatbelts, one day, Lord Chaitanya, the deity, spoke to him and said, Gauridas, you don't have to prepare so many things for us. We'll be happy because they're Bengali. We'll be happy with what? Rice. Rice and some spinach, some type of spinach. We'll be happy with that. That's enough for us. And we don't like to see you're so exhausted, and you can do some other service for us. You could have some kirtan for us. You could read some scripture for us. There are different things you could do as service for us. Rather than, every day spending hours and hours and hours preparing all these food offerings. And Gauridas, he was a character. He was a very, very great devotee, but he was a very great character too. He looked at Lord Chaitanya, this is a life-size deity, and said, so, you don't like my cooking, do you? And Lord Chaitanya said, no, we love your cooking. We really do. But we don't like to see you so exhausted. You could do some other nice things. We'd be very happy. And Gauridas said, so, you don't like my cooking. I understand. And then Lord Nityananda spoke and said, Gauridas, we love your cooking, but we'd love to hear some of your kirtan and other things like this. Yes. So don't worry about cooking so much. And Gauridas said, so you don't like my cooking either. And in the end, Lord Chaitanya, this is the deities, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, they said, Gauridas, just do what you like. Whatever you do, we'll accept it. Yeah, so just carry on. Yeah, because the Lord appreciates the service of the devotees. So we are not on the level of Gauridas Pandit and these other great acharyas, but just the fact that the deities come at least as an indication, or even strong indication, that they have accepted the family that they've come to. They have accepted that family as their devotees and really interacting with them and relating with them. And there's a real relationship there. And it's not just some ritual ceremony or something official like that. So, no, of course I've known the family for years and years. I can't even remember how long, frankly. How long, Sri Govinda? Is that 97? Okay. Right, so yeah, that's 25 years. And I know, I really know, the whole family, every last one, very sincere, dedicated, determined devotees who've done so much service and are going to do more too. They're a really nice family, one of the best, one of our best. And so it's quite fitting. Gaurnitai are there already, beautiful Gaurnitai. And now Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra Devi have moved from Newcastle. Yeah, it's a sign, not just a sign, it's a clear statement from those deities that they take the family members very seriously. And of course the point ultimate, they're already doing all these things. This is not like a surprise for them to hear that, we should have deities, and we should do this for them or that. They're doing all these things, but for others of us here who may not already be so much involved in these things, this is something that you can learn from. First of all, you've got to be Krishna conscious enough. That's the first step. Means you've got to be regularly chanting, regularly following the principles, and regularly, like a member of the devotee community actually, involved in the devotee community, chanting 16 rounds, etc. And preferably, not just preferably, but it's definitely the right thing to be initiated already. And then you can have, it's possible at least for you to have deities in your house, but you must know that you've got to look after them. Just like I know young people are careful, and their parents are even more careful before the young people get married. The parents of the girl check out the young man. Yeah, any of you young men, you must know you are being checked out. And one of the main things is, can he afford to maintain my daughter in the way that she has been brought up? And, a nice, appropriate and sufficient way. And it must be like that. It should be like that. It should be like that. Yeah, so if the family members are ready enough for it, of course that can be confirmed with the senior devotees, and particularly with the spiritual master. Then they can have deities at home and look after them. And it'll really add another dimension to their lives in Krishna consciousness. Just enrich their experience of life in Krishna consciousness tremendously. So these are some words from me, and we've still got a little time, right? is it? 10 minutes? So I'm going to ask His Holiness Bhakti Nrsimha Maharaj, a very senior devotee from ISKCON South Africa. You've been the devotee since 80-something, right? 86? 86, right. 87? So, please, some words of enlightenment and instruction. Can someone take this?
Tasmai Shri Prabhu Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shiva Shadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I've been put on the spot by His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, which is off the cuff, since I didn't expect to be speaking about a deity worship. But as I was hearing Maharaj speaking, it was very interesting. It reminded me, Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning of this movement, when there was like nothing, no temples, no qualified pujaris, Prabhupada introduced deity worship. In Bombay, when there was no temple, devotees were living in the bush. Prabhupada introduced Radha Rasa Bihari. And he asked the deity, my Lord, in future I will build you a temple. So this is a pure devotee. And indeed, some years later the temple came into existence. And we see that because of that strategy of bringing the Lord, Prabhupada kept those devotees engaged in devotional service. They became more stronger because the Lord was just right there. Every day they had to serve. So that was Prabhupada's strategy also of making this movement very strong by introducing deity worship. Prabhupada came to Nairobi in 1972 with Radha Banga Vihari. No one knew Prabhupada was coming. And then suddenly they had a knock at the door. There was Prabhupada. Prabhupada, we expected you next week. Prabhupada, no, I just decided to come now. And I came with Krishna. And the devotees were shocked. And Prabhupada, don't worry. In future, Krishna will manifest his own opulences. You just serve as much as you can. So that way, even ISKCON was kind of like established in those terms, bring the deities to help the devotees focus on the Lord and serve the Lord. In that way, they will be purified and they will become attached to Krishna consciousness. So we see that strategy is still working up to this day. And devotees are very much enlivened by the association of the deities. When there is no deity worship, and they always hanker for the Lord. So in that way, Srila Prabhupada also, we had this strategy of establishing deity worship in early stages of his movement, and up to this day we have become very fond of the deities. And that is what is sustaining our lives. So in that way, deity worship is very, very important. And when it is done very nicely, everyone become benefited, everyone become very jubilant. And we become inspired in our devotion service. That is my experience, having been a full-time devotee for 35 years, that we are always enlivened by taking darshan in the morning, mangalati, and 7 o'clock darshan, we go on Sankirtan, being very much enlivened. So that way, deity worship is the center of this movement in certain terms. Yeah. And deity worship has been part of this movement since Prabhupada began in the 1960s. So it's still very much part of our core devotional service, and everyone will agree with me. You go to Lenasia, you see Gonitai, you feel something. You go to Devon, Shishirararanat, you feel something. Your back become enhanced. So that way, that was Prabhupada's strategy also, not just for householders, or for all of us. Even sannyasis, when we come to temples, we feel enlivened after going through Dubai by long flights. When we come to the temple, and then we feel something. So in that way, it's not like just coming to an empty building where the Lord is not there. It's different. But when you come to the temple, after taking darshan, your jet lag become kind of like eased in that way. So that way, the darshan of the deity is enlivening us, is sustaining us, and even up to this day, since those days of ISKCON inauguration by Srila Prabhupada. So it's a process that is enlivening all of us. Thank you very much for asking us over to take part in this wonderful program where we are welcoming Jagannath Baladev, Subhadra Maharani, and Shishi Gornitai. Srila Prabhupada ki.